Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we get an opportunity to associate with Srila Prabhupada every day, who is the wellspring of knowledge and taste and Krishna consciousness. And he told us that his purports are his ecstasies. He also told us that if you want to know me, read my books. Whatever I have to give you, I have put into my books. I didn't hold anything back. So such a lovely way to associate with Srila Prabhupada. Okay, let's hear Srila Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we read every day to help us enter into this taste, this rasa, the Bhagavat rasa. Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Okay, and it goes, thank you. And do I have this on? No. I hope you could hear me because the microphone wasn't right attached to me. It was a little bit away from me. I got distracted and forgot to put it there. Okay. Srimad-Bhagavata Mihima Stotram by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It goes like this. Sarva Shastabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandotitaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madekabando matsangin madguno man mahadana man nisdadaga madbhagya mad ananda namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atini chochatakada hanamunchakadachin mam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we reached the last chapter of the 7th canto, 15th chapter. And what's the name of the chapter? I forget. Instructions? Instructions for civilized humans. That's a nice thing. We're learning now how to be civilized. We're living in America. We've taken birth in a, uncivilized. Anyway, Hare Krishna, you get the point. All right, Narada Muni is speaking, continuing his instructions to us to make us civilized, beginning with text 43. In the conditioned stage, one's conceptions of life are sometimes polluted by passion and ignorance, which are exhibited by attachment, hostility, greed, lamentation, illusion, fear, madness, false prestige, insults, fault-finding, deception, envy, intolerance, passion, bewilderment, hunger, and sleep. Well, that's a pretty comprehensive list of the material qualities. Okay. All of these are enemies. Sometimes one's conceptions are also polluted by goodness, which is an interesting point. We can talk about that later. Purport. The actual aim of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. But there are many hindrances created by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes by a combination of Rajaguna and Tamaguna, the modes of passion and ignorance, and sometimes by the mode of goodness. In the material world, even if one is a philanthropist, a nationalist, and a good man, according to materialistic estimations, these conceptions of life form a hindrance to spiritual advancement. How much more of a hindrance then are hostility, greed, illusion, lamentation, and too much attachment to material enjoyment? To progress toward the target of Vishnu, which is our real self-interest, one must become very powerful in conquering these various hindrances or enemies. In other words, one should not be attached to being a good man or a bad man in this material world. In this material world, so-called goodness and badness are the same because they consist of the three modes of material nature. One must transcend this material nature. Even the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies consist of the three modes of material nature. Therefore, Krishna advised Arjuna, Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunyo Babarjana, Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvasto, Niryogak Chima Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Bhagavad Gita 2:45. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Urdhvam gachanti satpasta. If one becomes a very good person, in other words, if one is in the mode of goodness, he may be elevated to the higher planetary systems. Similarly, if one is infected by Rajaguna and Tamaguna, he may remain in this world or go down to the animal kingdom. But all of these situations are hindrances on the path of spiritual salvation. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol Tamo. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Brahmanda Brahmite Gon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Poi Bhakti Lata Bij. If one is fortunate enough to transcend all this so-called goodness and badness and come to the platform of devotional service by the mercy of Krishna and the Guru, his life becomes successful. In this regard, one must be very bold so that he can conquer these enemies of Krishna consciousness. Not caring for the good and bad of this material world, one must boldly propagate Krishna consciousness. Text 45. As long as one has to accept a material body with its different parts and paraphernalia, which are not fully under one's control, one must have the lotus feet of his superiors, namely his spiritual master and the spiritual master's predecessors. By their mercy, one can sharpen the sword of knowledge, and with the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's mercy, one must then conquer the enemies mentioned above. In this way, the devotee should be able to merge into his own transcendental bliss and then he may give up his body and resume his spiritual identity. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 4:9, the Lord says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatpataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naitimam iti sorjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. This is the highest perfection of life, and the human body is meant for this purpose. It is said in Srimad-Bhagavatam 11, 20, 17. Just give it a break here. Oh, Hare Krishna. We missed you during the chanting of the Sanskrit. It's okay. Sanskrit. Nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabam plavam sukalpam gurukarnadaram mayanukulena nabasya vertitam puman bhavadbim natadet sa'atmaha. This human form of body is the most valuable boat, and the spiritual master is the captain, Guru Karnadaram, to guide the boat in plying across the ocean of nations. The instruction of Krishna is a favorable breeze. One must use all these facilities to cross over the ocean of nations. Since the spiritual master is the captain, one must serve the spiritual master very sincerely, so that by his mercy one will be able to get the mercy of the Supreme Lord. A significant word here is achyutabalaha. The spiritual master is certainly very merciful to his disciples, and consequently, by satisfying him, a devotee gets strength from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Guru Krishna Prasadi Poya Bhakti Lata Bij. One must first please the spiritual master, and then one automatically pleases Krishna and gets the strength with which to cross the ocean of nations. If one seriously desires to return home, back to Godhead, one must therefore become strong enough by pleasing the spiritual master. For thus one gets the weapon with which to conquer the enemy, and also gets by the grace of Krishna. Simply by getting the weapon of jnana is insufficient. One must sharpen the weapon by serving the spiritual master and adhering to his instructions. Then the candidate will get the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In general warfare, one must take help from his chariot and horses in order to conquer his enemy. And after conquering his enemies, he may give up the chariot and its paraphernalia. Similarly, as long as one has a material body, one should fully use it to obtain the highest perfection of life, namely, going back home, back to Godhead. The perfection of knowledge is certainly to become transcendentally situated Brahmabhuta, as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 18:54. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nashochati nakankshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. One who is transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward all living entities. In that state, he attains pure devotional service. Simply by cultivating knowledge, as the impersonalists do, one cannot get out of the clutches of Maya. One must attain the platform of bhakti. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyas chasmi tatpataha tatomam tatpato gyatva vishite tadanantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as He is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Unless one has attained the stage of devotional service and the mercy of the spiritual master in Krishna, there is a possibility that one may fall down and again accept a material body. Therefore Krishna stresses in Bhagavad Gita 4:9, Janma karma jamedi vyam evam yo vititatpataha chaktva deham punarjanma naitimam etisorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. The word tatpataha, meaning in reality, is very important. Tatomam tatpato gyatva. Unless one understands Krishna in truth, by the mercy of the spiritual master, one is not free to give up his material body. As it is said, Aruya krishtrena padam padap kadat patatak padantyado nadrita yushvat angrayaha. If one neglects to serve the lotus feet of Krishna, one cannot become free from the material clutches simply by knowledge. Even if one attains the stage of Brahma Padam, merging in Brahman, without bhakti, he is prone to fall down. One must be very careful in regard to the danger of falling down again into material bondage. The only insurance is to come to the stage of bhakti, from which one is sure not to fall. When one is free from the activities of the material world, then one is free from the activities of the material world. In summary, as stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one must get in touch with the bona fide spiritual master, coming in the parampara of Krishna consciousness. For by his mercy and instructions, one is able to get strength from Krishna. Thus one engages in devotional service and attains the ultimate goal of life, the lotus feet of Vishnu. Significant in this verse are the words Jnanasim Achyuta Bala. Jnanasim, the sword of knowledge, is given by Krishna. And when one serves the Guru and Krishna in order to hold the sword of Krishna's instructions, Balaram gives one strength. Balaram is Nityananda. Brajendra Nandana Ye Shachi Sutta Hoila Se. Balaram Haila Nitai. This Balaram, comes with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and both of them are so merciful that in this age of Kali, one may very easily take shelter of their lotus feet. They come especially to deliver the fallen souls of this age. Papa tapi yata chila, harinami udarila. Their weapon is Sankirtan, Harinama. Thus, one should accept the sword of knowledge from Krishna and be strong with the mercy of Balaram. We are therefore worshipping Krishna Balaram in Vrindavan. In the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.4 it is said, Nayam Atma Balahinena Labhyo Nachap Pramadat Tapaso Vapyalingat Etar Upayar Vadate Yastu Vidbangs Tashaisha Atma Vishate Brahmadama. One cannot attain the goal of life without the mercy of Balaram. Sri Narottam Das Thakur therefore says, Nitai Yerda Karuna Habi Braji Radha Krishna Pabi. When one receives the mercy of Balaram, Nityananda, one can attain the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna very easily. Seband Nahiyar Breha Brita janme gelatar, vidya kuli hi karibitara. If one has no connection with Nitai, Balaram, then even though one is a very learned scholar or jnani, or has taken birth in a very respectable family, these assets will not help him. We must therefore conquer the enemies of Krishna consciousness with the strength received from Balaram. Text 46. Otherwise, if one does not take shelter of Achyuta and Baladev, then the senses, acting as the horses, and the intelligence, acting as the driver, both being prone to material contamination, inattentively bring the body, which acts as a chariot, to the path of sense gratification. When one is thus attracted again by the rogues of Vishaya, eating, sleeping, and mating, the horses and chariot driver are thrown into the blinding dark well of material existence, and one is again put into a dangerous and extremely fearful situation of repeated birth and death. Purport. Without the protection of Gauranitai, Krishna and Balaram, one cannot get out of the dark well of ignorance and material existence. This is indicated here by the word nochet, which means that one will always remain in the dark well of material existence. The living entity must get strength from Nitai Gora, or Krishna Balaram. Without the mercy of Nitai Gora, there is no way to come out of this dark well of ignorance. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 1-2, Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Nityananda Sahoditao, Gaudadoye Pushpavantao, Chitrao Shandao Tamo Nudao. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Goda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. This material world is a dark well of ignorance. The fallen soul in this dark well must take shelter of the lotus feet of Gauranitai, for thus he can easily emerge from material existence. Without their strength, simply attempting to get out of the clutches of matter by speculative knowledge will be insufficient. Text 47. According to the Vedas, there are two kinds of activities, pravritti and nivritti. Pravritti activities involve raising oneself from a lower to a higher condition of materialistic life, whereas nivritti means the cessation of material desire. Through pravritti activities, one suffers from material entanglement, but by nivritti activities, one is purified and becomes fit to enjoy eternal, blissful life. Purport. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 16.7, Parittim cha nivrittim cha jana na vidurasuraha. The asuras, non-devotees, cannot distinguish between pravritti and nivritti. Whatever they like, they do. Such persons think themselves independent of the strong material nature, and therefore they are irresponsible and do not care to act piously. Indeed, they do not distinguish between pious and impious activity. Bhakti, of course, does not depend on pious or impious activity. As stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam 126, Savai pungsang pado dharmo yato bhaktir arhok sajay ahai tukiya pratiyata yayatma supersedati. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. Nonetheless, those who act piously have a better chance to become devotees. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7:16, Chaturvidha bhajante mam janak sukrutun Arjuna. O Arjuna, 4 kinds of pious men render devotional service unto me. One who takes to devotional service, even with some material motive, is considered pious. And because he has come to Krishna, he will gradually come to the stage of bhakti. Then, like Dhruva Maharaj, he will refuse to accept any material benediction from the Lord. Swamin kritarto smi varam nayache. Therefore, even if one is materially inclined, one may take to the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, or Goran and Nitai, so that he will very soon be purified of all material desires. Chipram bhavati dharmatma shwashach chantim nigachjati. As soon as one is free from inclinations towards pious and impious activities, he becomes a perfect candidate for returning home, back to Godhead. Text 48 and 49. The ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices known as the Agnihotra Yagya, Darsha Yagya, Purnamas Yagya, Chaturmasya Yagya, Pashuyata Yagya, and Soma Yagya are all symptomized by the killing of animals and the burning of many valuables, especially food grains, all for the fulfillment of material desires and the creation of anxiety. Performing such sacrifices, worshipping Vishwadev, and performing the ceremony of Baliharana, which all supposedly constitute the goal of life, as well as constructing temples for demigods, building resting houses and gardens, digging wells for the distribution of water, establishing booths for the distribution of food, and performing activities for public welfare. These are all symptomized by attachment to material desires. Text 50, 51. My dear King Yudhishthir, when oblations of ghee and food grains like barley and sesame are offered in sacrifice, they turn into celestial smoke, which carries one to successively higher planetary systems like the kingdoms of Duma, Ratri, Krishna Paksha, Dakshinam, and ultimately the moon. Then, however, the performers of sacrifice descend again to earth to become herbs, creepers, vegetables, and food grains. These are eaten by different living entities and turn to semen, which is injected into female bodies. Thus, one takes birth again and again. Purport. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 9:21. Tetam bhuktva svargalokam vishalam chine punye martyalokam vishanti evam trayi dharmam anuprabhana gatagatam kamakam aldabante. When those who follow the Pravriti Marg have enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, through the Vedic principles, they achieve only flickering happiness. Following the Pravriti Marg, the living entity who desires to be promoted to the higher planetary systems performs sacrifices regularly, and how he goes up and comes down is described here in Srimad-Bhagavatam, as well as in the Bhagavad Gita. It is also said, Trigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedas mainly deal with the 3 modes of material nature. The Vedas, especially 3 Vedas, namely Sama, Yajur, and Rik, vividly describe this process of ascending to the higher planets and returning. But Krishna advises Arjuna, Trigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtrigunyo Bhavarjana. One has to transcend these 3 modes of material nature, and then one will be released from the cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, although one may be promoted to a higher planetary system, such as Chandraloka, one must again come down, Chine, Punye, Martyalokam, Vishanti. After one's enjoyment due to pious activities is finished, one must return to this planet in rainfall and first take birth as a plant or creeper, which is eaten by various animals, including human beings, and turned into semen. This semen is injected into the female body, and thus the living entity takes birth. Those who return to earth in this way take birth especially in higher families, like those of Brahmanas. It may be remarked in this connection that even the modern so-called scientists who are going to the moon are not able to stay there, but are returning to their laboratories. Therefore, whether one goes to the moon by modern mechanical arrangements or by performing pious activities, one must return to earth. That is clearly stated in this verse and explained in Bhagavad Gita. Even if one goes to the higher planetary systems, Yanti, Deva, Brata, Devan, one's place there is not secure. One must return to Martyaloka, Abrahma, Bhuvanaloka, Punar, Avatanarjuna. Aside from the moon, even if one goes to Brahmaloka, one must return. Yam prapya nanivartante taddama paramam mama. But if one goes back home, back to Godhead, he need not return to this material world. Text 52. O twice-born Brahmana Dvija, a twice-born Brahmana Dvija gains his life by the grace of his parents through the process of purification known as Garbhadana. There are also other processes of purification until the end of life, when the funeral ceremony, Antyeshti Kriya, is performed. Thus, in due course, a qualified Brahmana becomes uninterested in materialistic activities and sacrifices, but he offers the sensual sacrifices in full knowledge into the working senses, which are illuminated by the fire of knowledge. Purport: those interested in materialistic activities remain in the cycle of birth and death. Pravritti marg, or the inclination to stay in the material world to enjoy varieties of sense gratification, has been explained in the previous verse. Now in this verse, it is explained that one who has perfect rabbinical knowledge rejects the process of elevation to higher planets and accepts nivritti marg. In other words, he prepares himself to go back home, back to Godhead. Those who are not Brahmanas but atheists do not know what is pravritti marg or nivritti marg. They simply want to obtain pleasure at any cost. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore training devotees to give up the pravritti marg and accept the nivritti marg in order to return home, back to Godhead. This is a little difficult to understand, but it is very easy if one takes to Krishna consciousness seriously and tries to understand Krishna. A Krishna conscious person can understand that performing yajna according to the karmakanda system is a useless waste of time, and that merely giving up the karmakanda and accepting the process of speculation is also unfruitful. Therefore, Narottam Das Thakur has sung in his Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Karmakanda, Jnanakanda, Kevala Vishara Bandha, Amrita Balaya Ye Bakaya, Nana Yoni Sadapide, Kadarya Bhakshana Kare, Tara Janma Adak Patayaya. The life of Karmakanda or Jnanakanda is like a poison pot. and one who takes to such a life is doomed. In the Karmakanda system, one is destined to accept birth and death again and again. Similarly, with Jnanakanda, one falls down again to this material world. Only worship of the Supreme Person offers one the safety of going back home, back to Godhead. Text 53. The mind is always agitated by the waves of acceptance and rejection. Therefore, all the activities of the senses should be offered into the mind, which should be offered into one's words. I'll repeat that again, please. You don't mind? Okay. Oh, all right. The mind is always agitated by waves of acceptance and rejection. Therefore, all the activities of the senses should be offered into the mind, which should be offered unto one's words. Then one's words should be offered unto the aggregate of all alphabets, which should be offered into the concise form Omkara. Omkara should be offered into the point Bindu, Bindu into the vibration of sound, and that vibration into the life air. Then the living entity, who is all that remains, should be placed in Brahman, the Supreme. This is the process of sacrifice. Purport. The mind is always agitated by acceptance and rejection, which are compared to mental waves that are constantly tossing. The living entity is floating in the waves of material existence because of his forgetfulness. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has therefore sung in his Gita Vali, Michi Mayara Vashe, Yacha Beshe, Katcha Bhabudububai. My dear mind, under the influence of Maya, you are being carried away by the waves of rejection and acceptance. Simply take shelter of Krishna. Jeev Krishna Das, E Vishwas, Karli Tara Dukanai. If we simply regard the lotus feet of Krishna as our ultimate shelter, we shall be saved from all these waves of Maya, which are variously exhibited as mental and sensual activities and the agitation of rejection and acceptance. Krishna instructs in Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarvadharman Prityaja Mamekam Charanam Braja Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayishami Ma Shuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. Therefore, if we simply place ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, Therefore, if we simply place ourselves at the lotus feet of Krishna by taking to Krishna consciousness and keeping always in touch with Him by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we need not take much trouble in arranging to return to the spiritual world. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is very easy. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nastevya, Gatiranyata. Text 54. On his path of ascent, the progressive living entity enters the different worlds of fire, the sun, the day, the end of the day, the bright fortnight, the full moon, and the passing of the sun in the north, along with their presiding demigods. When he enters Brahmaloka, he enjoys life for many millions of years, and finally his material designation comes to an end. He then comes to a subtle designation, from which he attains the causal designation, witnessing all previous states. Upon the annihilation of this causal state, he attains his pure state, in which he identifies with the super soul. In this way, the living entity becomes transcendental. Text 55. This gradual process of elevation for self-realization is meant for those who are truly aware of the absolute truth. After repeated birth on this path, which is known as Devayana, one attains these consecutive stages. One who is completely free from all material desires, being situated in the self, need not traverse the path of repeated birth and death. Text 56. Even those situated in a material body, one who is fully aware of the paths known as Pitriyana and Devayana, and who thus opens his eyes in terms of Vedic knowledge, is never bewildered in this material world. Purport: Acharyavan Purusho Veda. One who was guided by the bona fide spiritual master knows everything, as stated in the Vedas, which set forth the standard of infallible knowledge. As recommended in Bhagavad Gita, Acharyopasanam. One must approach the Acharya for real knowledge. Tad Vijnanartam Sugunum Eva Bigachet. One must approach the Acharya, for then one will receive perfect knowledge. When guided by the spiritual master, one attains the ultimate goal of life. Text 57. He who exists internally and externally, at the beginning and end of everything, and of all living beings, as that which is enjoyable and as the enjoyer of everything, superior and inferior, is the supreme truth. He always exists as knowledge and the object of knowledge, as expression and the object of understanding, as darkness and as light. Thus he, the Supreme Lord, is everything. Purport. Here, the Vedic aphorism, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, is explained. It is also explained in the Chatushloki Bhagavatam. Aham evasam evagre. The Supreme Lord existed in the beginning. He exists after the creation and maintains everything. And after destruction, everything emerges in Him, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Prakritim yanti mamikam. Thus, the Supreme Lord is actually everything. In the conditioned state, we are bewildered in our understanding. But in the perfect stage of liberation, we can understand that Krishna is the cause of everything. Ishvara Paramak Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme controller. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for He is the prime cause of all causes. Brahma Samhita 5.1. This is the perfection of knowledge. Text 58. Although one may consider the reflection of the sun from a mirror to be false, it has its factual existence. Accordingly, to prove by speculative knowledge that there is no reality would be extremely difficult. Purport. The impersonalists try to prove that the varieties in the vision of the empiric philosopher are false. The impersonalist philosopher, Vivartavad, generally cites the acceptance of a rope to be a snake as an example of this fact. According to this example, the varieties within our vision are false, just as a rope seen to be a snake is false. The Vaishnavas say, however, that although the idea that the rope is a snake is false, the snake is not false. One has experience of a snake in reality, and therefore he knows that although the representation of the rope as a snake is false or illusory, there is a snake in reality. Similarly, this world, which is full of varieties, is not false. It is a reflection of the reality in the Vaikuntha world, the spiritual world. The reflection of the sun from a mirror is nothing but light within darkness. Thus, although it is not exactly sunlight, without the sunlight, the reflection would be impossible. Similarly, the varieties of this world would be impossible unless there were a real prototype in the spiritual world. The Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand this, but a real philosopher must be convinced that the light is not possible at all without a background of sunlight. Thus, the jugglery of words used by the Mayavadi philosopher to prove that this material world is false may amaze inexperienced children, but a man with full knowledge knows perfectly well that there cannot be any existence without Krishna. Therefore, a Vaishnava insists on the platform of somehow or other accepting Krishna. Tasmat kena pyupayena mana Krishne niveshayet. When we raise our unmixed faith to the lotus feet of Krishna, everything is revealed. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita 7.1, Maya sakta manapartha yunjame yogam yunjan madashrayaha asamshayam samagram mam yata gyasyasi tachtrinu. Now hear, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. Simply by raising one's staunch faith in Krishna and his instructions, one can understand reality without a doubt. Asangshayam, samagram, mam. One can understand how Krishna's material and spiritual energies are working and how he is present everywhere, although everything is not him. This philosophy of Achintya Beda Beda, inconceivable oneness and difference, is the perfect philosophy enunciated by the Vaishnavas. Everything is an emanation from Krishna, but it is not that everything must therefore be worshipped. Speculative knowledge cannot give us reality as it is, but will continue to be nefariously imperfect. So-called scientists try to prove that there is no God and that everything is happening because of the laws of nature. But this is imperfect knowledge because nothing can work unless directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.10 by the Lord Himself. Maya yakshena prakriti suyate sachadacharam hetunan inakonteya jagat viparivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and is producing all moving and non-moving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya gives this note: Durgat Tatvad Atatvena Parameshwar Renaiva Kalpitam. The background of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadur Labaha. This can be understood by a Mahatma who is perfect in knowledge. Such a Mahatma is rarely seen. Hare Krishna. We'll stop here. It's 5:30. Exactly, on the dot. 5:30. And this is time for our open mic. If anyone wants to give us a reflection on what we heard, discuss deeper, inquire. Yes, Sarva.
One of the early sections, there was a nice description which I enjoyed of in a battle using the chariot and horses, but then once you conquer the enemy, you give it up. It was mentioned giving up the material body when we've used it properly to develop Krishna consciousness. That was nice.
Yes.
Then there was one thing I'd like you to expand on, perhaps. Sometimes it says in one of the verses, sometimes one's conceptions are also polluted by goodness.
Ooh.
So it talked about the passion and ignorance being like enemies, but can you describe how goodness can also be polluting subtly?
Yes. Well, Rupa Goswami describes Sarvopadi Vinyamuktam Tatpadat Nirmalam, means that as long as one is identifying with the modes of nature, whether they be goodness, ignorance, or passion, then one has to take another birth in the material world. So even if one is in pure goodness or pure ignorance, one still has a material body. And although that pure goodness is like a springboard, it allows one to see things more clearly and therefore to hear the scriptures more clearly and know what to do and what not to do. Still, as long as one identifies with material goodness, which is always tinged, and that's another point. It's never completely. The only pure goodness is in the spiritual world. Within the modes of nature, which are, the material world is composed of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So there's always some passion and some ignorance, even if it's just a tinge. That's why in the higher planetary systems we've heard so many stories about how the demigods sometimes have to run away from the demons, or they have, fights among themselves, or they have problems with each other's, sensual, activities. So even in the highest planetary systems, where they're very much in goodness, Brahma's his body is so transcendental that even when he had some trouble, and Lord Vishnu told him to abandon his material body, he just did. But his body is not like our body. His body is completely subtle. So it's like when you have a bad thought, and then somebody says, that's not very good, and then you say, okay, I changed my mind. I changed my mind. In a sense, that's giving up material body, the subtle body. So Brahma's whole body is subtle. It's not spiritual, but it's subtle. It's made of subtle material energy. So even if you're in pure goodness in the material world, you can't be in pure goodness in the material, but even if you are prominently in goodness and are fixed in the activities of Brahminical culture, still you have to come back into the material world as a Brahmana in your next life. And there's no guarantee that you'll stay there, because the material nature is very strong, especially in this Kali Yuga. Therefore, the Srila Prabhupada begged us, please, just take this simple. It was one point that was made when it was talking about how we have to, merge the mind into the this and that and the other thing, and come to unmanifested this and that, and then these are yogic principles that can be done once one can control the mind and subtle airs within the body to a very, very deep extent. Still, one has to come back to the material. And in Kali Yuga, it's impossible to take that path. So, Lord Chaitanya just gave us this art of keeping our mind always in Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. So you're driving down the road, going to work, or doing some housework, or doing whatever that doesn't require all of your attention. You can chant Hare Krishna. It's free. It's transcendental sound, which is more potent than all the other yajnas combined together. And you get the same result, transcendental realization. And then you can go back home, back to Godhead. Because the thing is, unless you're in transcendental consciousness, you can't go back home, back to Godhead. You have to come back into the body as long as you are in the modes of material nature. And that's the point of your question. So even goodness is considered to be a contamination. Material goodness.
In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna was not wanting to fight against his relatives, he had kind of high...
Say the first part again, Sarma.
In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, he was a Kshatriya, but he was talking about non-violence, which is more and Krishna kind of chastised him for being attached to something that wasn't transcendental, I guess.
Yeah, he chastised him for being attached. He also chastised him for acting like a knowledgeable man when he was actually, in the process of not doing the duty that he was given by nature. In other words, okay, so you're in goodness, or you're in mixed goodness and passion, or you're in passion, or you're in mixed passion and goodness, passion and ignorance. You can perform your duty, sway karma abhabitak. That's in the 18th chapter of the Gita. You can do your duty to Krishna from any mode of nature. If you're a Shudra, and it's actually a Shudra is a noble position. If the Shudra has a loyal service attitude towards the master, and does his service loyally, and serves Krishna, and worships Krishna, he goes back to Godhead. Just like the Brahman goes back to the Godhead, or anyone. It's a matter of doing our duty in Krishna consciousness.
There's no excuse not to serve Krishna.
There's no excuse not to serve Krishna. I'm just repeating Sarva's words, because he doesn't have a... So Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nikankshati. We sit around and we, stay in ignorance and passion and are disturbed or restless or unhappy. And Krishna is saying, don't be unhappy, just come back to me and you can become happy eternally. Who won't want to do that? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a break and finish my rounds because I've had phone calls all day and then my rounds are not finished. So I'm going to be dutiful to my spiritual master and finish my rounds. So we'll close down to today. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and wish you all well and that you can become attached to Krishna and get a taste for hearing the truth. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Narada Muni ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo, Hare Krishna.